Hello. In this video I just wanted to go over the ability to split and recombine pins on certain blueprint nodes. Now, as I've been working with blueprints and as I'm learning about new nodes, I always just have a double check and right click over some of the pins, and sometimes, depending on what type of node it is, you have the option to split that pin. So here I've set up a location vector just by adding the variable and adding a vector. But then if I split that pin, it breaks down the component parts. X, Y, and Z are the three axes from which a location vector is determined. I've named it location vector. By default, it's just vector. You can then recombine, you might perform some calculation. For example, you might want to divide by a certain amount only on one axis and then recombine that distance. I can't think of an example, but just more to demonstrate the point that you can split out either location information, that's obviously the set node, this is the get node equivalent, same thing. Rotation, you can do the same thing, so you can split that and then deal with X, Y, and Z, which correlates to roll, pitch, and yaw. Same thing on the getter, you can split that. You can link across, of course. You can do any kind of calculation, should you wish to manipulate the input and then what you're setting by offsetting, for example. Another vector, so exactly the same vector. This one I've just called scale as the variable name. Same thing. So rinse and repeat. Now transform is super powerful because it is a combination of things. It's a combination of three variables. So we have location, rotation, and scale. But then we can subdivide that again. Subdivide again, subdivide again. If we don't want that, we can then come to one of those and recombine them. Recombine. And there's different use cases for this, but it's just more really to drum home the point that keep and remain curious. Just use your right mouse button just to evaluate what you're looking at and what can be split should you need to have more localized control over a certain attribute. Now, spawn actor of class, it can be part of the input as well. So I'm now splitting, I can affect I could promote that to a variable and then control that from elsewhere. It just gives you that control. Now, one thing that will happen if you're using spawn actor of class and you've just nominated a particular actor, if you don't set any transform information, you will get an error. If you just want it to spawn at the origin 0, 0, be 100% and not rotated, if you just split that, that's the default settings, but you need to split it to remove the error. So coming further down, that's just in relation to all the transform info. Let me get rid of that so we can clear some space. The dark blue represents a struct, which a struct is basically a structure of variables combined into a single struct. So if I split the linear color, we've gone from a linear color RGBA, that's a single value, to now having individual control over the red, green, blue, or alpha values. Again, depends on what you're wanting to do. That can be useful if you're wanting to randomize the opacity of something. You would just affect the alpha but keep the RGB the same, for example. As this demonstrates, there's a lot of nodes that are part of the blueprint system which are structs. And there's many, many more, hence kind of keeping curious and just double checking on a few things. So here, this is an existing struct, another existing struct, which just deals with the Boolean values associated with light channels and whether or not they are true or false. Splitting structs in mind. You can, of course, create your own structs. So if you come to the main menu and you come to Add Import Blueprints Structure, if you click on that, what I'll do is find the one I created just now, Demo Struct. So you just name it as you would normally, double click it, and then you can add new variables and just build up a list here. So that list can be a whole combination of different types of variables. They don't need to be all floats or all integers. You can get quite kind of complex really in the way that you use this, and it's super powerful as a way of just organizing all variables that relate to a particular thing in one place, so you're not having to do it over and over. So if we go back to our custom struct, you saw that it was made up of 4 different types of variables. If I right click on that and split the struct, there we are. It's made up of a Boolean, an integer, the transform and the actor. We can of course split the input and then the getter. When we've set those variables, again we can just access them individually, again depending on the need, but more to demonstrate that you can create your own. This also then gets used quite extensively across all the other blueprint graphs. So if I move over to this HUD, this is a widget that I've created, but I'm just going to demonstrate how embedded and nested certain functionality can get. And this node illustrates the point beautifully. So in style, very discrete, tiny little thing, split struct. We now have a struct made up of more structs. In style normal, split. Okay, so now we've sort of subdivided all the variables associated with that first struct. And then in style normal tint, I can split that again. So that I think takes us to the margin. So you can see that we can affect absolute individual aspects of this. Just the RGB alpha values. This is can become a bit of a minefield. I was styling up some drop-down menus, and the default styling of the drop-down menu isn't particularly attractive, and I was trying to strip out all the kind of drop shadows, and it was getting all very fussy, but it took a while to kind of work out exactly, because the naming becomes a little confusing, and because there isn't a kind of discernible break between when you have and haven't split a struct, you can kind of get lost. You can't really see the wood for the trees, but it just takes a little patience and a little back and forth, because Unreal Engine gives you such granular control over all the different states, particularly on the drop-down menu. So hopefully that's of use. If these videos are giving you some value, then please do like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. So thank you for your support.
Live long and prosper.